welcome to the Sharpe Show. Thank you so much for taking a few moments out of your evening. It is 7 p.m. on the East Coast, which means you have to look at my mug. Don't ever forget that. That's the rules. You know what I'm going to ask you to do? Like, comment, and share. You know I am. So please get there. Stop looking at me and instead click that like button. Click whatever you got to click. Share it. Let people know because they don't know that we're out here unless you tell them. So go and tell them. And if you like what I'm doing and you want to support the show, then do me a favor. Head over to patreon.com/Sharpeway. Throw me some of those Trump bucks or Biden bucks or stolen bucks, whatever you got. Throw them my way if you can. If not, no worries. The easy way of helping me out without paying a dime. And that is head over to theadvocates.org. Take the human respect test. The link is in the description. Click on that. It's free. It takes about 3 minutes. Share it with your friends. You can help me out. Makes my sponsor happy. Makes me happy. Everybody's happy. Do that now. One or the other. Life is good. I am very lucky today. I have with me an author, a speaker, a consultant, a teacher, a trainer. Just he's all the cool things that you can be. The man himself, Bob Burg. How are you, sir?
I'm great, Larry. What a pleasure to be with you.
I am happy that you were able to make it. And some people may not know this, but we actually met several years ago, maybe about, I'm thinking now it's probably 12 years ago, maybe 2008 or 9 in that area. Your Go Giver book, the red one, had just come out. I know you've had more since then, but that was the red one. When that one came out, I remember I met you at a BNI convention. Mm-hmm. And what I liked most about you, what struck me, there were a lot of speakers and people out there doing stuff. As always, everyone's trying to, be the cool guy in those conventions. But you were not a fan of the elevator pitch.
Right.
Which everybody was like, you got to have that. That's the thing. You got to let people know, all that stuff. But you were not a fan. You were the rebel in that regard. But I believed you. I thought you were right the whole time. If I remember right, you were the one who was saying, see if I get you right. You can sum up what the newly met person,
how interested they are in you.
Yes, thank you.
In three words.
Good. Tell it. You tell it. What are 3 words?
They don't care.
Bingo.
Not when they first meet you. Not when they first meet you. They care about themselves and about their business. So the degree you can shift your focus off of yourself and onto them, that's the degree that you make a real genuine connection with someone new.
That is, the piece you always bring up. You talk always about focusing on the value of others, focusing on what value you can bring. But I got to tell you, that's hard during this COVID lockdown, right? It's hard when everything is changing. It's hard when our environment has shifted so much and now we start, feeling that idea of scarcity, right? It's hard.
Sure. Yeah, well, I agree with you. And, it's human nature that when you start to panic a little bit,
mm-hmm.
you turn inward.
Yes.
And you start going into survival mode. And I mean, this is, began with our ancestors, the cave, in the cave person days.
Sure.
Every day was literally, not figuratively, literally a fight to survive the day.
Absolutely.
Right. So, we don't have that same essential danger, of course, but it's been hardwired into our DNA big time. And so,
some people feel it, don't they? Don't they feel like that's what's happening, right? And I guess what I'd ask you is, if someone's coming to you saying, Bob, I get what you're saying. I want to provide value. I do. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But man, how do I grow myself? How do I take that time to grow myself to be the person that I want to be, right? To be that person when I feel like the world's ending.
Well, so I think there are a couple of points there. One is, what do you really do in a situation that is a lousy situation? I mean, with the pandemic, there's no way to sugarcoat this. There's nothing good about it. We might find out 50 years from now, looking back, there was something good that came, but let's be, realistic about it. This has been a terrible thing. And so many people have been hurt. Literally lives ended, or, it's a terrible situation. And I think, and I remember Harry Brown, who was really one of my heroes. He might have been before your time, Larry. I'm a little older, but Harry was just, to me, a guy who really understood how life worked
Mm-hmm.
He understood human nature. He respected human nature. He worked within, and he always said, that successful people deal in truths,
Okay.
right? And so I think the first thing we always have to do, and it goes right back to this pandemic, is you look at what are the truths of the situation. And the fact is, there are certain things we cannot do.
Right.
Some for legal reasons, some it just wouldn't be safe, some
Mm-hmm.
because of this or that.
Right.
And there are people whose businesses have had to close down. But
Yeah.
but
There
so
are physical restrictions.
physical restrictions. So it's
Yes.
not that you just sugarcoat it and say, no, I'm just going to be positive. No, you look at what is there that's true that you cannot control. And there
Right.
are certain things. Now, you acknowledge them. You live
Mhm.
in truths. You acknowledge them, but you don't stay there. You don't live there. You don't make that your focus. What you
Yes.
hopefully do is now focus on what can I do?
Sure.
Okay.
Even
And
if it's hard.
even if it's hard, and it
Yes.
is.
Yeah.
And that's why you've seen a number of businesses that have shifted the way they've done things. They've determined who is their market that can
Sure.
buy for them, or they found different ways. I mean, the easiest example is the restaurants who
Sure.
turned into takeout places because that's what they had to do. Okay, a pivot, right? And that's
Right.
kind of the word. We can't always. Not everyone can do the same thing. But
Right.
what we can do is we can ask ourselves what options we do have, what choices we do have. How can we add value, in this case, to the marketplace in a way that allows our business to survive, hopefully to thrive, but at least
Mhm.
to survive until this thing's over and things get back a little bit to what they are, or what they're, what we're used to, if that ever happens. But
Right.
there will be a normal. It may not be the same as it was, but there will be one.
Well,
And
you bring up a point that I want to touch on here. This is hard. And when I talk to people about this, about, you know what, Larry, what you're saying is tough. Oh, yeah, this guy, Bob Burg, says this stuff, but it's hard. And what I say is there's a difference between difficult and impossible. And a lot of
Right.
people don't get that. They go, well, it's hard. I can't do it. No, that's not a logical sentence.
Exactly.
It's hard, which means it's difficult to do.
Mhm.
Is it impossible? If you're telling me there's, as you said, the physical restraint, right? It's impossible. Okay, then you can't do it. I got it. But if it's difficult, that doesn't mean you can't. It just means it might take longer.
Yeah. What can you do? Let's live in.
Yes.
And this goes back to the ancient Stoics. I mean, this is exactly what they said. A part of happiness comes from not being attached to what you cannot control. And,
Right.
Let's face it. We've got to find ways to look at what we can do. And in terms of business, that means providing value to the marketplace in such a way that others will pay us for our goods and services.
Sure.
And it's not easy. This is a terrible situation.
Absolutely. But you're all about relationships, right? And it's not always clear that providing value has anything to do with relationships, right? Because you have the operations guy or gal who's like, I can make the thing. See? And I've made the thing. Why aren't people knocking down my door and buying the thing that I made? I made the thing that has value, but they don't get that. There also has to be a relationship to where someone can understand the value or get that you're the person or trust you, whatever the case may be. And man, I think right now with COVID, people are starting to withdraw and they're starting to think and stay in their heads a lot, right? Mm-hmm. And then they're starting to think what you're talking about. How do I reinvent myself? Or how do I create this new product? Or how do I change my career? And they're spending so much time in their own heads. How do they then begin to re-engage those relationships so that people know that they are that good or they've created something or they're a valuable employee or whatever that case may be?
Well, let's go back to that person. The great point you made about, I said value doesn't necessarily equal sales, but let's take it a little deeper and see what needs to happen, what needs to take place for that to happen. So the first thing I think that's important to understand is the difference between price and value. Okay. Price is a dollar figure. It's a dollar amount. It's finite. It simply is what it is. Mm-hmm. Value, on the other hand, is the relative worth or desirability of a thing to the end user or beholder. In other words, what is it about this thing, this product, service, concept, idea, this thing that person you were talking about has designed and made and manufactured. Okay. Now, what we need to remember is that value is always in the eyes of the beholder.
Sure.
Remember, relative worth or desirability. So this guy who's invented this great widget, okay, if nobody knows about it, because he can't get out there or she can't get out there and market it and sell it and so forth, for them to say, well, why aren't people buying it? I made it. It's got great value. That's not living in truth. Not living in reality.
Okay? Right.
And so either that person needs to learn how to sell, which I think is a great skill for everybody to learn.
Sure.
Or they need to partner with someone who can sell and get that out there. But the world, isn't going to come beating a path to our door because we have something that we think they'll like.
Do you think that also applies to someone who's just looking for work? Right. And I've said this before, and the hard part here is I've told people before, there's nothing wrong with using a recruiter. Right. A recruiter is basically a salesperson for you.
That's right.
Right. If you're really that good person, using a recruiter is fine. The worry is, like a salesperson, finding the right one. Right. That's the hardest one. Finding the right salesperson if you're selling a product, or finding the right recruiter if you're selling yourself. I feel like people are afraid of people are almost afraid of using that. They feel like they're the only one that can sell themselves, or they're the only one that can sell their product. Nobody knows my product like me, or nobody knows me like me. Is there a way that we can kind of, I guess, let go?
Well, we always want to, if we can, let go of our attachment to the results. What we can do is, because we can't control the results, we can control the activity.
Sure.
And we can control doing the right activity. Now, when you talk about jobs, this goes back to, in a sense, let's take it back again to sales. And in those days that I used to go to places to speak at sales conferences, right? I'd have lots of salespeople in front of me. And the first thing I would say is this, and I'd say it in a joking way. I wouldn't say it in a dogmatic fashion, but I would say, nobody's going to buy from you because you have a quota to meet.
Right.
And, they'd laugh. We'd all laugh because we know that's true, right? No one buys from us because we have a quota to meet. No one's going to buy from us because we need the money. And no one's going to buy from us just because we're a really nice person.
Right.
They're going to buy from us because they believe they'll be better off by doing so than by not doing so.
Right.
And in the basically free market environment in which we live, we know there's a lot that's not free market. There's a lot of cronies and there's a lot of things that shouldn't be, but in the basic free market environment in which most of us operate, and free market in this case simply means no one's forced to do business with anyone else. Okay. People buying for their own reasons, their own benefits, not ours, is totally expected. It's the only reason why anyone should buy from you or from me or from anyone else.
Absolutely.
But this is great because it means that entrepreneur, that salesperson, who can place their focus totally and absolutely on bringing value to that other human being, that's the person who creates that benevolent context for that sale to take place. So that's fine. Now, it's the same in searching for a job.
Sure.
Right? No one's going to hire you because you need the money or you have a mortgage payment. They're going to hire you because they believe they're receiving more in use value than what they're paying.
Absolutely.
While you're receiving enough in value or in payment to make it worthwhile to have the job. Again, and this is again goes back to Harry Brown. He said in any free market-based exchange, there should always be two profits, the buyer profits and the seller profits, because each of them come away better off afterwards than they were beforehand. It's the same with an employer-employee relationship.
No, I get it. So I want to go to, I guess, the idea of kind of re-engaging after you look at the political landscape. And what I mean by that is, now that the election's over, I'm sure you've seen it. You begin to talk to people about, business or getting a job or whatever the case may be. And they're basically trying to figure out what your political world is, right? They're trying to figure out, are you a Trump guy? Are you a Biden guy? Are you right? They're trying to figure out where you are and where you stand on this stuff. And particularly now with the idea of cancel culture, right? Now, Bob, you said something bad about Trump once or something good about Trump once. I now judge you as the other.
Right.
And now, right? And now I'm not sure if I want to do business with you or hire you. Is
Yeah.
there, I mean, you're the master of the intro. Is there an intro that we can do to kind of somehow deflect or deal with that, or we're just dealing with it?
Well, I think in a sense we deal with it, but I think the key is to always, in a kind and tactful and diplomatic way, sort of bring it back to what the real, what the real point is. So if somebody says, what do you think of a certain thing? We want to be able to say, well, I think all of us really want what's best for, so and so, for this to be. And we're not really saying who we're for or who we're not, and I don't think we necessarily have to. Um, of course, as libertarians, we're which I know many of your audience members are, not all of them, but many are. As libertarians, we tend to be, that person outside the matrix.
Yes,
right.
Absolutely.
So,
Yes.
we're not conservative, we're not liberal, and we're not moderate. We're
Yes.
outside that thing. Freedom is our highest political value, which we
Sure.
believe not only is the moral right, a moral right, but we believe it actually helps the most number of people, including those people who need help the most.
Sure.
Okay. So with us, I think we can sort of, go to that, like you, I want to live in a country where we're able to be, free and happy and healthy and so forth and so on. And
I love what you just said. You went like you.
like
That
you,
was so good.
That is the key. And I actually learned that about maybe 25 years ago from a guy named Marshall Fritz, who was very big in the libertarian movement many, many years ago. He's since passed. And he and a man by the name of oh goodness gracious, all of a sudden the name hit, but it was the Ray Ransberger, and they called it the Ray Ransberger pivot. And what it was a very gentle and diplomatic reframe. When someone came at you as though you were the enemy for thinking differently than they did.
Right.
So for example, let's just take and then I added something to it with some of my teaching, but the Ransberger pivot, which starts with like you, I want to, and it basically sounds like this. Someone says, well, you and let's say it's a person who believes in a single payer government run total healthcare system, and they say people like you who don't believe in that are you just want to see people out in the street and you want people to die and blah 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 and so forth. Okay, now you can come back with it, well, people like you are going to earn you I mean, I've never seen someone, by the way, either on social media, in person, whenever, insulted, right, for their thoughts or their beliefs, and then answer by saying, wow, you're right. I hadn't thought about it that way, but now that you've insulted my intelligence and criticized everything I believe in, I'm going to agree with you.
I'm on your side now.
Right,
Thanks.
I'm on your side now. So let's say someone says that about the regarding healthcare, and so to me, the best response is to, whether it's tweeting or on Facebook or in person in a group conversation, whatever it happens to be, is just to say, I really appreciate your passion for this, because I can tell absolutely that you care about who can't, take care of themselves. And that is so admirable. Like you, I want to live in a society, or I want to live in a country where people are able to have access to really good, affordable healthcare, and no one has to worry about being left aside or having their family member just die because of so I think the big thing is that you and I probably see two different ways to go about having that happen, but we're both basically wanting the same thing. Boom.
Right.
So there's two things here, Larry. One is, someone might say, okay, that's fine, Bob. And every so often you've got someone who really, appreciates that and will even apologize. And I've had it happen, but it doesn't happen often. Okay. Usually people there who are the ones who really insult you at the beginning, they're not going to change. But here's the thing though. In most conversations, online and off, there are many more lurkers or witnesses or people than there are people engaged in the conversation.
I always say you're debating for the audience.
Exactly.
Yes.
And so there's some people who are so far to the left or so far to the right. You're not, their mind's made up. Don't confuse them with the facts. It just
Right,
isn't
sure.
going to happen. But most people, that's not the case.
Right.
Most people really do want what's best for people. And most people, if they see you approaching it in a way that is, again, kind, tactful, intelligent, knowledgeable, okay, they're much more likely to say, okay, maybe there's something there. Now, they may not be persuaded right there, but they're open for the next time. And I can't tell you how many people have either, direct messaged me or in-mailed me through a thing that's like, I saw what you were saying, and, I don't quite, agree because I'm used to, but I really liked how you said that, and blah, blah, blah. And, so now you can kind of, you take it off of yourself and you say, well, you know what, you might enjoy this article by Dr. Mary Ruwart, who I know comes from a place where that person may be able to relate. Or you know what I'm saying? So there's
right.
do. It's not necessarily a quick fix, but if we handle ourselves correctly and appropriately, we can make a dent.
I love it. It's like a sales process that's still based upon value and based upon respect. I mean, that's really, really the issue. Connie has something. Connie says, great interview. FAB, features, attributes, benefits. Listen, meet people where they are. The art of conversation. People buy stories. Connie likes you.
Yeah, Connie's great. And, it's interesting because when it says meet people where they are, that's so important because so often what we want to do is because we're so passionate about our beliefs. How can they not think this if we only give them that exact sentence or that, but then they're going to, no, they're not.
Yes. It's not magic, right?
Connie says, right? Just meet them where they are. Thank them for the conversation. Thank them for their opinion. Thank them for their intent.
Well, I think that's I love what you're saying. I mean, you if you get where the person is, right? You talked earlier about the idea of living in truth and knowing where you are, and you don't have to stay there. You just have to accept. I know where I am, right? One of the things when I was in the Marine Corps, you had to be a good map reader because you couldn't get to point A until you knew where you were, and that's how you got to point A first. You didn't know where you are first, so you get where you are and then move. You're saying the same thing for the person you're talking to. Know where they are, meet them, and then you can move them too, right?
Right now, build a relationship, and once they, and again, and you've heard me say before, and it's in I think all of my books when I say all things being equal, people will do business with and refer business to those people they know, like, and trust.
Yep,
that's where it begins, and that's where people are going to then start to. They're not going to change their mind on an issue until they trust you enough to know you have their best interests at heart, and that there's no threat to their to their self-esteem, to their ego, and so forth. So the relationship is so very important.
Absolutely. Jimmy says, wow, Bob is so correct. I noticed the first thing with his techniques, the first part is respecting the person and listening to them. Respect.
Thank you, Jimmy. Yeah,
I mean everything. I can't. Jimmy gave me the perfect segue. We're going to talk quickly about respect right now. Listen to this guy talking about respect. Larry Sharpe here, host of the Sharpe Way Show, and boy, do we need to start coming together and healing now more than ever. Best way to do that, respect. We got to respect each other so we can start to come together. How can we facilitate that? Head over to theadvocates.org/human respect tests. Yes, there's a test for human respect. You didn't think there was? There is. Take that test. About 3 minutes. That's it. It's done. Share it online. Share it on your social media. Let other people see it. Let them take the test. Share it with others. Let's start talking about respect. Let's start talking about healing. Let's find the right answer for us to move forward. Theadvocates.org human respect tests. That guy's smart. You should listen to him.
He's very smart
and good looking, which is the best part. Absolutely, yes, it's good.
Didn't even need a room for that.
Melissa brings this up, and Melissa's in this field. She says, "Sounds a lot like motivational interviewing again." We've kind of covered this in the past.
Hi, Melissa.
Yes, and it's true. It does go with respect first, right? Because one of the things I found, and tell me if you found the same thing, Bob. when it's something like political, right? Where they like somebody, they think somebody's great or awesome, or they hate somebody, right? One of the things that I feel they want to know is that you don't hate their guy. Even if you don't like their guy, they want to make sure you don't hate their guy, because if you hate their guy, you're clearly a bad human being.
Well, you think about this. Why is that so? Because of the identification they have with that person. And, it's very difficult when you feel very attached to a candidate, not you, but when one feels very attached to a candidate, right? And they really just, they see this person as just a fantastic representative of everything that's good and pure in the world and what, right? Well, if you hate that person, in a sense, you're hating part of that person.
Sure.
Right. So their ego, their self-identification is very wrapped up. It's very absorbed with that person. So sure, if you communicate your hatred for that person, you might as well just tell this person, I hate you. That's how they take it.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. It's crazy. Brendan says, I tried convincing my mom the negative income tax is a good idea so that poor people have incentive rather than just stay poor. My mom said the negative income tax is just free money. He says, laughing my ass off, it's a hell of a lot better than UBI. A little bit off topic, but the idea is Brandon's talking about, and you probably know this concept of the negative income tax. Friedman talked about it a lot particularly in the 70s and 80s. He talked about it a lot in the 70s. He talked about the idea of the negative income tax, the idea that you would give money to people who don't make a certain amount of money and that kind of thing. The part that I bring up with Brandon is he's trying to convince his mom. Maybe his mom can't be convinced in one sitting.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Maybe it will take some time to convince your mom. I mean, maybe that's what it is, right?
Yeah. Family is always a difficult, and we love them, of course, and adore them, and they feel the same about us. And sometimes we show, not intentionally, but less respect when arguing with a family member because we're so close to them, and we just don't think.
And you're right. When you're that close, sometimes I think you sometimes respect them less, right? In a way. And the example I'll give is young children. When there's a young child and the mom does something, the young child is a brat to the mom, just a total brat to the mom. Horrible, mean, I don't love you anymore, mom. It's a terrible brat to the mom. But the uncle comes over or the aunt comes over and the kid's good. The kid's quiet and good. And I think the issue is the kid knows mom's love is unconditional. So the kid can do whatever he wants. Perfect. But the kid doesn't know if the auntie might slap me. So I got to be good to auntie because she might slap me. But mom.
Yeah. And remember too, if especially the more we love someone, the more we want them to think correctly. And of course, the way we think is the correct way.
Clearly. So yes, absolutely. So yeah, Brandon, maybe it's going to take a little bit of time to figure that one out. So Tom says, I find that when I'm in the field and libertarian comes up, it's easier to have a conversation with people, no matter which side of the line it seems to be useless at times to get past someone's echo chamber to actually talk. So I think what Tom is saying here, if I read him right, is that it's actually easier to have a conversation with people outside of our echo chamber versus inside our echo chamber. And this is one of the big issues we have as libertarians, and Tom brings this up. So often we just talk to ourselves. So we don't know how to meet the other person where they are because we have no clue where they are. We assume they're where we are because everyone else we talk to is in the same spot. We all think government should be smaller, but not everybody thinks that. We all think individuals matter, but not everybody else thinks that. So we sometimes struggle not knowing where to go with the other person because we spend so much time in our own echo chamber.
Yeah. So the great point that you and Tom hit on is basically, and this is another aspect of human nature, that we all operate out of our own set of beliefs, our own belief system. Okay. What is a belief? Well, a belief is a subjective truth. It's the truth as you or I understand the truth to be, which means it might be the truth and it might not be the truth. It might just be our truth, right? And a belief system is something that we all have, and it's a combination of upbringing, environment, schooling, news media. But by the time we're little more than toddlers, our basic belief system has already been set, and we had nothing to do with setting it because we were not able to think critically, check our premises. Is this thing that mom and dad has said, is this correct? Why is it correct? Where did they learn it from? How did that work? Right? So most people grow up and live their lives controlled in a way by what I call an unconscious operating system.
Okay.
We think that we're thinking, and we think that we're operating out of free will, if you will, when in reality, we're really operating within a matrix that has been created for us. Now, the first thing to getting out of the matrix is what? Taking the what was it, the red pill? Right. And in this case, it simply means understanding that this is the case. And it's something that we all fall victim to. It's just part of life, how it is. But here's the thing. And you brought this up beautifully. You said, most of us, we kind of assume, we think that other people see the world basically the same way we do, which is very intuitive. How could it be anything different?
I'm the average guy. Everyone thinks like me.
Right. One of my friends, Judy Piani, she wrote a book called Normal is What I Am. Right. So, but they don't think like us because they came from their own set of beliefs and they have their own subjective truths and they have their own, right. Yes. And so that first part is, again, it's asking questions, and it's really listening, not so that you can counter a point why this is right or that's wrong or this is right, but just listen to understand where they are coming from.
I always say that real listening is hearing with focus.
Oh, I love that.
Right. And the focus is on the other person.
Exactly.
Right. Listening is hearing with focus on the other person, not what I want to say and how cool I am, but instead, how cool are they?
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Right. It's not how cool I am, it's how cool you are.
Yeah.
And I think that's really an important piece. But there's another aspect to this, I think, and that is the outside world often pushes us to think certain ways. Right. So if I'm so scared of the virus, as an example, and now the vaccine's here, I could be, now everything's awesome. Let's get out there and do stuff. But in reality, maybe the vaccine isn't even near me. Maybe it has no effect in my area. But I believe my temporary feelings have changed. Or the reverse, right? I just saw my aunt get sick, or my father get ill or something. And now I feel like, oh my God, the world's ending, right? So the other thing kind of affects me in a temporary way. And I feel like a lot of people are affected by the recent events in all types of ways that makes them depressed, or the reverse, happy or something.
Yeah. I got to tell you that since the virus really began, I think in March is when things really started to happen. And, I try to listen to both sides and get, and then try to, what's the right word, synthesize them, to kind of come up. But I've been confused. I mean, so when and everybody has an opinion, right? But really, these opinions are not based on true facts necessarily. They're based on what we hear, who we hear it from, who we want to believe, who we don't want to believe,
yeah,
and so forth. So, when people ask me my opinions about, I try not to opine on things when I don't know what I'm talking about.
There we go. Yes.
When I do know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
So I found it very confusing. But I think one reason I find it confusing is because I'm trying to listen and synthesize and not necessarily believe anyone without questioning.
Absolutely. Yes.
So so it's really to me that's what makes it a tough situation.
Dan brings to the point. He says, we need to get past what Dave Ramsey called post-election derangement syndrome. It takes two forms, depending upon who you voted for. If you voted for Trump, you are irrationally depressed. If you voted for Biden, you are irrationally exuberant. So either way, we're irrational. I guess that's how it works. So, but I think there's some truth to that. Isn't there some truth to that?
I think he makes a great point. Sure.
Yeah, was it Dan Ariely who wrote the book Predictably Irrational?
Irrational. Yeah, it was a great book.
Yeah.
And you know, the fact is, and I always say, when I say the fact is, I'm about to give my opinion. Yeah. But really, I think it's been proven in many ways. Dan Ariely's book, and a guy named Daniel Kahneman, who wrote a book,
Sure.
Thinking Fast and Slow. I think his book was absolutely a masterpiece.
Absolutely.
They both really share fantastic information on how it is that people act totally emotionally, not totally, but mainly emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
And, as human beings, and anyone in sales, anyone who studied sales, we learn that in Sales 101.
Yep.
People act emotionally, they make decisions emotionally, and they back up those emotion-based decisions with logic. In other words, they rationalize. And if we break up the word rationalize, it means we tell ourselves rational lies. And we do this to justify the emotion-based decision that we made. And I absolutely believe that. I've seen it too much and I do the same.
Of course, we're all human.
Yeah. And so, but it really is even worse than we think.
Okay.
And they, in both of those books, and I highly recommend both of those books, they, because they really they do the experiments, and I don't know how they figure out those things. That's beyond my
I will put the books in the show notes after. So what happens if people want to click, they can go ahead.
But I mean, really, it shows that so many decisions are not they're not based on ration. They're not based on logic. Now, that doesn't mean there's no hope for humankind. It means we need to understand the truth is that as human beings, we are predisposed to make decisions emotionally.
Yes.
Back up those decisions. So when and in my latest podcast, I did a whole thing on confirmation bias.
Sure.
Right. And what is that? It's that human tendency to, that when we believe a certain thing, when we come across new information that coincides with that's congruent with what we already believe, we accept it as fact.
Sure.
But when we come across some new information that disagrees with what we ignore it.
Right. So can they get to your podcast via YouTube page? Is that how they get there?
They could just go to burg.com and scroll down the page, and it will take them to the.
There we go. So guys, you can see right there, for more on Bob, see right there at the bottom of the screen says www.burg.com. That's BURG, not BE.
That's right.
BURG.com. Head over there. You can check out his podcast, check out his book. He's another book. You have a new one that came out recently, right?
The most recent one is the Go-Giver Influencer.
That's the one. Yes,
right. Really all about people skills, and it's kind of the parable version of my book Adversaries into Allies, which is a how-to book on people skills. I always say it's been called the How to Win Friends and Influence of the the new decade, but of course I'm the one that called it that, so it really doesn't.
I love it. Well, Paula's checked it out already, so it's good. Paula's already on board.
Thank you.
So all good. Yes,
That's
absolutely.
Pup. I saw the picture of Paula's pup right there.
Yes.
Wow.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
So I know you're a big animal lover. I know you are.
Yeah, we've got a couple of foster kittens right here beside me. I don't know if you can hear them meowing or not. That's the latest group of 3. That was my friend Wendy, who's just a hero of mine. She just rescued them off the streets of Miami, and they're
so nice.
They're just getting used to human touch at this point. They were, feral, of course. They were right off but they're really coming along great, and they'll be ready for their forever home.
I love that.
Yeah.
Forever, not forever.
Absolutely.
Forever. I love that. Very good. I appreciate that. Jimmy says, my path for the first time hearing about the LP to becoming a big L was over 20 years. I keep that in mind when talking to others.
What a great point.
Yes.
What a great point that is. Some people, it's just going to happen. It's that thing they were looking for. And other people, it's going to be a process.
Absolutely. And we have to realize that, right? Not everyone's going to come as fast as we'd like them to. It'd be amazing. I mean, I'm greedy. I want 7 billion libertarians. I'm greedy. But that's going to take a couple years.
Likewise, but it's not right. It's going to take a couple years, yeah.
There we go. Yes. So Paula calls herself now a forever libertarian.
Paula. Yes, I love it.
See that? Absolutely. Absolutely. 100%. Yes. I love that. So Connie says, active listening, not just waiting to say what you wish next.
Exactly. And it's so, it's so human Connie, you bring up such a great point, because again, we're listening, but really what we're doing is thinking, okay, how do I respond to that?
How do I respond
to that? How do I? So, and we need to be conscious of this and just allow ourselves to listen.
So let me go to I think a tougher spot, which I think a lot of people are worried about. I know I am. With the lockdown, we're not doing the face-to-face as much. And while this is great, and I'm so happy you were able to do this, I wish I could have, had you up here in a studio. That would have been amazing, right? Fun. But this is what we got, so we deal with it, as you say, right? There are certain things we can and cannot do, so we accept it. But there is a difference, right? I would have rather have had you here in the studio. I would have rather done a face-to-face, but I can't. I got it. So how do we handle that lack of touch? How do we handle that when trying to make that next step? Any advice on how we can handle that aspect as we're trying to keep our business relationships together, both internally, right? Internal relationships, and also client-facing relationships, right? And not everyone is client-facing, but most of us in some way face a client, right? Most of us do. Yeah. But so how do we deal with that?
Well, again, as you say, it would be ideal if we could, if it could be face to face. In sales, it used to be called belly to belly, right?
Yeah. Right? Yes. Yep.
And but this is the next best thing, so you go with what you have. When I first started, I think when I first started speaking, it was about 30 years ago, and I built my business on the telephone. And I had to create relationships with the people I was prospecting. And you could do it. You could do it on the telephone.
I think people are actually going back to that now.
Some are absolutely they are. And so just the fact that you can actually have a Zoom call with someone and look at them is, that's like heaven compared to just, getting on the phone and picking up and never being able to see that person and so forth. So, I think there's a lot of technology that really helps us make the best of a situation that's not a pleasant situation.
Well, I like what you just did. What you basically did is you just compared it to what it was in the past, and it's in certain ways it's better. I agree with you. I mean, I spent a lot of time on the phone. I mean, I used to cold call. So I get it, right? Completely. This is way better than cold calling.
This is way better, yeah.
Way better, right?
Way better, yeah.
Absolutely. So yeah, I think it is an issue that if we look at it that way, that look, at least we still are able to do this. If this pandemic had happened 20 years ago, I mean, we don't have this. 15 years ago, the best we have is maybe Skype. I mean, that's it.
Near as advanced enough as it, as it is now. So yeah, absolutely. We're
so we kind of are better off. Look at that. You made me feel good, Bob. Nicely done. Nicely done. Carol says, I learned so much from listening to you, Larry. Thank you. The way you talk to people is what I aspire to. Oh, thank you, Carol. I appreciate that. I really appreciate that. I'm trying to make a show that people want to have a conversation with me. I'm trying to make that happen. So let me go to something that I think a lot of the people who are watching are concerned about. Do you have any advice? And this is just general advice, or even if you're looking at the market and you know something, but do you have any advice on people trying to say, you know what? This year made me rethink my career. Either I realized I don't want to do what I'm doing, or I got fired, or I got laid off, or any of those things. And I kind of want to reboot or change my career. Maybe I want to be an entrepreneur now, or maybe I was an entrepreneur and now I want to get a job, or whatever. Any advice on what to do or how to do it, or mindset, even anything?
Well, I think it probably is the case that's happened with a lot of people. I think a lot of people have said, this kind of showed me that there's nothing that's certain.
Sure.
And that I don't want to be on my deathbed and say, I really should have done this, but and so forth. And this almost provided that opportunity, for lack of a better word, to do that. So yeah, and I mean, I think it's an individual thing. You decide if that's something you want to do and do your best to make it work out.
Well, the funny part about this is, to your point, I haven't had a job in about 17 years, give or take, in that area, right? Like a job, you know what I mean? But I haven't had one of those in about 17 years. I've been a temporary office in a public company a couple of times, but 3 to 6 months. But nothing that as an actual job, if that makes any sense.
Mhm.
And most people thought to me, Larry, that's silly. I mean, that you have no stability. Oh my God. And I'm saying to myself, neither do you. We just have different lifestyles. That's
Yeah.
really what it is. And hopefully you enjoy your lifestyle, and hopefully I enjoy mine. But none of us have stability, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we always have to reinvent ourselves or change. And the thing that I always bring up is, people have asked me, what is the requirements for success? And people usually think, well, the requirement is you got to be great at what you do and the best at what you do. And I say, no, not required. You've got to be good and better than your peer group. That you've got to be better than whatever your peer group is. If you're lucky, your peer group's terrible. If you're lucky, and then if you're lucky, and then you shine because you're mediocre, because they're all terrible. So you've just got to be better than your peer group. Number one, if you're better than your peer group, that's step one. But step two is, you've got to have a world filled with relationships that will allow you to be open to positive strokes of luck. You've got to have that kind of place where when things happen, people are thinking of you. When things happen, people trust you. To your point, you said all the time, they got to trust you, right? You said all the time, like you, know you, trust you. You've got to have an environment where enough people feel that way about you. So when that positive stroke of luck hits, whatever that is, for some people, it's a massive stroke. For some people, it's a tiny one. Just, happen to be there for the thing. And then that's the catalyst that now moves you into this great place, right? And I think that's a critical piece. And I think some of us are struggling now with that, because we've been told for so long, just follow the rules, just go to college, take the tests, do what your boss says, show up 9 to 5, and you'll be successful. Well, that's not a bad thing, but that isn't the formula.
Yeah. And I think you make some great points. And when you were saying about being prepared for when that luck happens, I call it the benevolent context for success.
Ooh, I like that.
It's sort of like the other team fumbles, the offensive team fumbles, but the defensive team is positioned where they're supposed to be.
Right. Yes.
Right? And that's why they're able to recover, or it increases the chances that they'll recover. And so I think that's I think that's a big part of it. But forming those relationships, competence, being great at what you do, that's important.
Yes, of course.
But I think that's bottom line. I mean, I think that's entry level, right? You've got to be good. You've got to have that competence. You've got to be good at what you do. And you can get to a certain level of success through competence, hard work, and following the rules and so forth. But I think to get to that next level, this is where I see people skills being a very big part of this. This is the ability to work with people in such a way that you develop those know, like, and trust relationships. People want to be around you. People feel good about you. More importantly, they feel good about themselves when they're around you.
Absolutely. Yes.
And several years ago, Jeff Colvin, who is the editor at large at Fortune magazine, he wrote a great book called People Are Underrated. And the premise of the book was basically that it used to be people would ask the question, what can humans do? I said the name of the book was Humans Are Underrated, right?
You said people.
People. No, it's Humans Are Underrated.
Humans are underrated. Okay.
Yeah. And so he said the question used to be, what can humans do that machines, computers, whatever, can't do? Well, that's no longer a valid question, because at this point, computers, machines, robots can pretty much do everything, just about, right? They can write briefs, they can do diagnoses, they could do operations, all sorts of things. Now the question is, what is it that humans can do that people will not accept from machines?
Okay.
Yeah. For example, heaven forbid someone dies after an operation. Okay. The family members don't want to see that, don't want to read that on a printout.
Right. Sure.
Okay?
Sure.
It's a doctor who is compassionate and human and so forth. And so he had study after study, great points, where people who develop the skills of leadership.
Mhm.
Uh,
Leadership, empathy, influence.
Empathy is the
Sure.
most important one.
Yep.
Being able to collaborate,
Yep.
being able to these are the people who are going to be the top money earners because their value to the organization, to those they lead, to the consumer just goes through the roof.
My training is always now in leadership, not in management. And I would say management computers can do. Management is processes and resources. But leadership is people. Leadership is getting the best brains, together and making smart teams smarter, right? That's really what leadership is about. And that's all about communication. There's an exercise I'll do often in a room, and I'll say, guys, do me a favor. Can anybody here can think about a great leader they had, whatever that leader is, manager, coach, teacher, anyone you've had, supervisor, and please tell me about that person, a little bit about that person, what made them great. And people will say a couple things, whatever it is. And I'll say, no, none of you said technical skill.
Mm-hmm.
You always said something like, he was a good person, or he taught me, or she was so nice. She was a good listener. She was able to motivate me, any of those things.
Right.
Being
Exactly.
the good leader is not based upon your technical skill. No one goes, oh my God, him and a spreadsheet? Oh my God. No one does that, right? Nobody does that. It's always some emotional piece. It's something like that. And I always say, if you're really good, you're going to get stuck here. But if you want to get past, now to your point, the being good technically is no longer enough. It's still important.
It's the entry fee. You've got to have it just to play.
Yes.
But it's not. Yeah.
Now you got to have, the emotional intelligence or the empathy or the leadership or the influence or all the things you talked about, any of those things to make that next level. And sadly for them, but not for me, because it's my business model. Sadly, for most people in law, tech, and finance, they struggle, right? Those are the three fields that they struggle the most in, because they are always given accolades and promotions because of their technical skill.
Right.
And then all of a sudden now they have to lead, and they go, lead?
Yeah.
What's that? They have no idea.
Great point.
So you're totally right. I will often tease and say it is what I call post-industrial leadership. Right. It's leadership after the revolution. Now, how do I get people to move? So I love what you're saying. I totally get it. And I didn't even know that book. I now have to think about that book too. Now you're giving me work, Bob. I gotta put stuff in the show notes and everything. All these books you gave us. I think it's amazing. I think it's absolutely amazing. So I guess you have talked about you're a big free market guy. Any predictions for the future on what's going to happen now, post-COVID, post-election? Any feeling or prediction or anything you have?
Well, the more the years go on, really the less free in terms of free market, and I think of free market and free minds as really being the same thing. I always love the Reason magazine. Their moniker is free minds and free markets, because they both, right? You take one away and you probably don't have the other.
Right. Yes.
And when we say liberty, and this is one of the things too, when you're talking to someone who they hear you talk about holding liberty as a high value, and they don't really, they'll argue with it, but it's really because they don't understand what is meant by liberty. So you're saying anything goes?
Right. Right.
And so you can do this, you can harm her, you're saying, like, yes, that's what I'm saying.
I'm saying murder people in the streets is what I'm saying. Of course. What else? Yes.
So we always have to then, define. Now we thank them for the question. And, and we say, well, when we talk about liberty, what we're really talking about is the right to live one's life in whatever way and however way one sees fit in their pursuit of happiness, providing, of course, they don't infringe upon the rights of anyone else to do the same.
Absolutely.
Because they're thinking, oh, no, you don't believe in any kind of government. No, government is absolutely there to protect people against force and fraud.
Absolutely. Yes.
Right? But
yes, indeed.
Otherwise, leave people free to live their lives and pursue happiness as they see fit, to buy, sell, and trade with one another. And when we take it there, now we can explain a little bit more. So we can explain and open them up a little bit to the idea.
Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, because
So-
they're thinking liberty or freedom means a free for all with no,
So for those of you who want more on Bob, please head on over to burg.com, BURG.com. I put all his stuff in the show notes. You can look at it if you want to. Twitter's there, Facebook's there. Click on whatever is the cool social media that you like. All good. Bob, before we wrap this up, anything that you want to bring up that I didn't talk about that you want to talk about?
No, I mean, I think you just covered it. You're such a great interviewer, and
Thank you.
Yeah, terrific human being. It's so obvious as to why you have such a fan base. And of course,
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. All right, guys, I want to say thank you so much for watching. As always, please like, share, and comment. As I tell you every single show, please do that. Head over to burg.com. Check the show notes. I'm going to put stuff in it later on. Also, some extra pieces that Bob talked about.